Hey, this is Mike from Junkyard Crafts and Builds, and yeah, I'm a little bit different right now with this video, and I wanted to take some time to really get this done because it's a really cool creative project that I wanted to show you, and hopefully it's going to be pretty successful. So what is that going to be tonight? We're going to actually dye some figures. So I've been following a good friend of mine, ML Series, on some of the Action Force and G.I. Joe community Facebook groups, and he's done this a couple times, and it looks pretty cool, and it seems fairly simple. So I want to take a shot at it, and I want to bring you along for the journey. So why don't you come along with me, and we'll check out how I have things set up as we go forth and Junkyard Crafts and Builds dyes some figures. So here we are going handheld, guys, and I've got a kind of a setup here going to kind of explain what we're doing before I go through the process. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be dyeing these figures here. I have two of my Arctic Troopers, and I have a Vampira and Python Patrol Copperhead that I got on sale from Target from the most recent clearance sale. So what we're going to be using is this Rit Synthetic fiber dye. Now this is important to realize that we're saying synthetic because this is what's going to adhere to the plastic. So I have two colors here I'm going to try tonight. The main group, which is going to be Vampira, Copperhead, and one of the Arctic Troopers, we're going to dye graphite or black because I really miss having one of my Spec Ops guys and I really want to replace him here. And then for the other Arctic Trooper, we're going to try maybe this chocolate brown. It might be a little close to like a desert brown. We'll see how it looks, you know. In addition to the figures and the accessories, we're going to be doing some of the weapons from the Weapons Pack Hotel. I'm going to split them up between the two colors that I want to use. So that's the majority of stuff. Now, one of the things that I kept asking ML Series was like, well, how do I protect the eyes or any other part that I don't want to have dyed? And he said, you know, some of the other people that do this on a regular basis said use clay. Well, I wasn't sure what was going on, so I went to Michael's and I picked up this oven baked clay. This is a polymer clay, and I'm using that to black out or protect the parts that I don't want to have dyed. Now I did try this out, basically putting this head in boiling or in some warm water for about a minute and a half, and the polymer did not come off. It was a little soft, so we're going to see how well it lasts because this dyeing process is going to be about an hour or two, and obviously we're not going to have the filming going on for an hour or two, so just giving you a heads up that this process is not quick. And you know, we'll see how it goes from there. Now, another important item to have whenever you're dealing with dye, like I said, it's dye. It's going to change the color of whatever it goes on. So always, 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 when you're dealing with this, get some rubber gloves to protect yourself. Get on some garments that you don't care if it does get dyed. It's not going to ruin. It's going to ruin it. So I mean, if you don't care about that, that's cool. All right. First thing we're going to do is give our figures a bath. So I have some warm soap water here, and we're just going to go ahead and give them a bath, get all that oil and stuff that might have come from your hands or from the packaging itself off, and that will give the dye a good clean surface to adhere to. So we're going to go ahead and do that now, and then we'll go to the next part, okay? All right, here we go. Let's just get them all cleaned up. We're just going to lightly go over each figure. Make sure that nothing oil-wise is on them. And when you have them done, just go ahead and rinse them off a little bit with some cold water. Dry and repeat. Now for some of these figures that I've already taken apart, I'm just going to use this little colander to hold all the pieces in place because we don't want to lose anything. Okay, so now that we gave everyone a bath, now it's time to separate and protect. So let's just go ahead and separate. But before we do all that, I talked about protecting things like the eyes and the visor. And like I said, I'm using this polymer clay, and I already kind of did some practice with the classified series figures. But I just want to go through and protect things like this really cool paint job on the visor. So what you need to do is kind of just take polymer clay, soften it up in your hands, and try your best to get it into the areas that you want without going across into the outer frame where you want to have the die touch. It's going to take a little bit of time, obviously, because you want to try to get this as close to perfect as you can. But yeah, so we're going to do that for all 4 of these heads and get them ready to go. Alright guys, so it's time to change into our garments that we don't really care about. So of course, we're going to put on the US Space Force shirt because we all know Action Force is going to go to space here soon. We got our protective gloves for our hands, and we've got our die. So let's go ahead and get over here by the stove. So sorry guys, it's the initial weird angle for everything, but I just want to kind of show what we got going on here. So I have a pot full of water that's getting to a slight simmer. You don't want to have it boiling, because if you do that, you're going to warp your toys. So we're going to get this up to a nice simmer where we just start seeing the bubbles barely show, and then that's when we will put in our entire bottle of dye. Okay? I also have, like I said, my colander that I'm going to have sitting inside to allow me to keep all those small pieces and parts from touching the bottom and getting melted or warped, but also allow me to move them around. The other thing I have over here is a baking pan full of warm water from the microwave, just so if I need to get anything and adjust things around, because part of this process is making sure that all those joints get moved around a little bit and that dye gets a chance to seep in onto everything. The last 2 items, we have our little cheapo spoon that we don't care if it gets colored or not to stir everything around. And we have our little cheapo Walmart tongs to grab figures in and out of the colander. Okay guys, so we have a light simmer going on right here inside the pot. Now this is the important time, again, to be very careful, because now that you've opened up your synthetic dye, you must be careful, because again, everything at this point. So we're just going to go ahead and gently pour in the dye. There we go. Every last drop, right? Alright, so we're going to gently put this away, and again, always have some wet paper towels or cloth nearby, just in case if there's any dribble, you can get it up right away. So now we're going to take our spoon and we're just going to stir this all around, make sure the dye gets warmed up and mixed with the water. Alright, moment of truth, right? So now we're going to put in all of our pieces. So I already kind of warmed up our Arctic Trooper in the warm bath and got him all limbered up. I'm going to do him all in one piece. So we're going to put him in the colander. We've got our selection of Action Force weapons. Again, all from Weapons Pack Hotel. I'm going to put those in, as well as the hands for the Arctic Trooper. We're doing all the hands in that. Here we have first of 3 heads with the polymer clay on. I'm going to lay those in there. Alright, so there's the pot full of figures. This is the last second that they'll be their natural plastic color and paint. Let's go ahead and set it into the pot. And doing this one-handed is very nerve-wracking for me, but there we go. And we're going to give them an initial stir just to start agitating the dye into the plastics here. And you can already see, boom, that dye is taking effect right off the bat. And again, the longer they're in there, the deeper and darker that dye is going to go onto the plastics. So while I'm waiting here, I would pass on that please, if you like this type of stuff or just impressions on action figures, go ahead and give this video a like. Comment down below. Would this make you nervous? Does this even look like it's something that's fun, or would you rather just paint your figures? Let me know. And you know, like I said, if you like everything, subscribe. And you know, I'll be doing more content like this and some other stuff on my channel as we go along into 2024. So let's check back in a little while. Okay, so we're about an hour or so into the dyeing process. Again, this is still warm. All right, it's not simmering, but we're just going to give this guy a little stir and kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at right now. So let's see what we can pick out here. So here is the body of Copperhead, 1 hour in, and you can really see that that dye is taking into effect, and all that yellow, green, puke color that was the Python Patrol stuff is slowly turning black. You can still barely see the Python Patrol symbol there, and you can definitely see the striations, but that's kind of cool, just seeing how it's going all black, man. Here we have the girdle for our Copperhead. You still see a little bit of that gold for the belt buckle, but it's a lot more muted now, maybe giving a little more depth to it. All right, well here's Vampira's body. So what we're going to do now is just kind of maneuver things around. It should be pretty loose. And you see why we're changing it here. You see I got a little bit of the original color from her skin still showing. So what you need to do is just kind of do a little adjustments. All right? And allow that dye to kind of get into that spot there, okay? So we're going to make sure that that gets back down in there. Okay, so here is our Arctic Trooper so far. And that white is taking things a little weird, right? And the mint green that everyone complains about is turning into this really neat, like grayish purple color. So we're just going to kind of move things around here. As you can see, we got some exposed white because we had those joints closed. So we're just going to adjust things around. We're going to put them in a T-pose just to get all that white covered with dye. So there is one of the Arctic Trooper heads. Again, the polymer clay is still on, but that white is definitely taking that black on really well. I'm super impressed and happy with that. So, like everything else, like a good gumbo or a good chowder, we're just gonna let it ride.
2 hours later.
Okay, so we're back, and I let these guys sit in their little stew for a little bit longer. It's around 11 o'clock local here, so we started probably about 8 or so, give or take. So we're at, you know, almost 3 hours of stewing. And I think that is time well spent looking at how well this dye has taken to these figures. So I think what we're going to do is kind of stop it here and kind of really start getting all this stuff dug out of our little pot. All right, so the little hot water bath that I have sitting here is now cooled down to about room temperature, slightly lukewarm. That's just going to help me cool these down a little bit, so then I can go and put them back in the sink and do a final cleansing. So let's just start digging through here and start pulling stuff out. Okay, so now we got everything out of the pot, and it looks really awesome. Now, we did have a little bit of a casualty in regards to the polymer clay coming off, and it came off on Vampira's blades here. So the steel did get dyed a little black, but I don't think that's bad. Now, what is unfortunate though is that the red plastic didn't really get much of a change at all. So, you know, this is an experiment. It's all right because it's Vampira, not really too big of a deal in my opinion. So now what we're going to do is take our figures and we're going to rinse them off here in the sink. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we have our figures in the sink now. We're going to start running some cooler water in here and we're going to pour all this out. Don't worry, with the dilution, it's not going to stay in your sink, and leaving all of our dyed figures in place. So now we're just going to go ahead and start rinsing these off. Get all that extra dye residue off the figure. Again, the color itself is not going to fade because it has been dyed, but this does allow you to go through and inspect. And if you're not happy with the color, that's why I left the pot over there with the dye in. I can just plop them right back in and let them sit a little bit more and change that color. So I have Bamford Space here with the polymer clay. So I'm going to rinse that. Rinse her head really well. And now I'm going to go ahead and take the clay off her face and we'll see what happens, okay? And you didn't see any of that stuff, but here it is right here. So let's go ahead and try to take this clay off and see what we have underneath. Okay, so as you can see here, I still need a little more work to do to get that polymer clay off, but you can see that it did protect the paint underneath. So there's her flesh tone and her eyes are still detailed. So that's kind of a win for me. So I'm hoping for the same success with the Arctic Trooper head. All right, so my Action Force figure, I'm going to have to let him cook a little bit longer in there because as you can see, even after folding, some of the joints are not completely even in regards to the color tone, specifically around here at the ankles. You can see when you move down, that was still kind of showing white, so I gotta let him go a little bit longer. So I'm going to put him back. Oh yeah, you can see that exposed elbow there is still the white color. So that's fine. That's why we look through this stuff and do a quick rinse, and we'll put him back in the pot. But just look at that color variation so far. Just really wild, you know? So we're going to put him a little bit like this. We can get those joints that still need a little more love exposed, and let's put him back in the bath. So this is the first Valorverse weapon that I pulled out, and it took things fairly well. Now you can see here in the stock there is a little bit of blotchiness in the dye, so I might put this back in a little bit longer as well. It's just a little bit of inconsistencies, and maybe that's because I wasn't stirring it or getting it agitated enough, and it kind of sat against the colander grates. So we're going to go ahead and put this back in as well.
The next morning.
So this is the next morning. I let the figures dry overnight, and I'm really impressed with the results. Some good, some not so great, but we're going to go through it real quick here. Of the three characters that I dyed last night, I was truly impressed with Copperhead, and we're going to go ahead and zoom in on what I'm talking about here. So here we have Copperhead's main body and his head, and wow, what a change in this figure. I wanted him to be more like a stealthy mercenary with his dark black suit, and this does not disappoint. As you can see here, you can still tell he has those cross hatches from the Python Patrol line, but it's really subtle now, and I kind of like that a little bit more. On the face here, because I don't have the right tools here, I got to get the rest of that molding clay or that polymer clay out of there, but it protected his face perfectly. I mean, it's just awesome. You just see the barest tone of the original color underneath there. But overall, I am really impressed. Like this belt, the gold on the buckle is still there, but it's a lot more of a muted color. I really love it. And everything still moves really, really well. I mean, he is nice and pliable. Again, really impressed with him. The arms, I love. Again, it's all black, and he did have some black parts already, but it was that puke yellow color for the Python Patrol that now is eliminated, and we have this black bodysuit with these subtle crosshatch lines across the arms and chest. The legs are another amazing copy here. Like this was the other tone inside for the original color, and I'll do side-by-side pics. But just him in all black now is really fantastic. Moving on to Vapra. She turned out okay. Again, once I get the modeling clay out of the face, but her face has been protected. Everything works really well. Again, it's a subtle shading here in these cross hatches, and the red really came into this really dark, I gotta describe the color, but it's very subtle. She is very dark, but you can tell the different color tone here for the red gives her a little more of a textured look to everything. Her arms, again, the bare skin parts. Some of the paint kind of came off a little bit, but overall, no complaints over what she looks like now. Again, all the joints still work. It's just a different color. Now, like I said before, I had the polymer clay over the blades, but it came off during the dyeing process. And these blades now I'm not horrified by it. You can kind of think it's like a more weathered look for the sword. Our Action Force Arctic Trooper. You can't really tell me that this was the same figure until I put him side by side with an undyed one. So here's the dyed, there's the undyed. So this is the color change that happens, and it's really it's really awesome. Now I didn't take any acetone to the mint green, and you can see here it came out this really cool purplish gray, and the body part here, it kind of shimmers a little bit, but really cool, really nice, and everything, like I said, still moves really well. Unfortunately, it did have some casualties with the Action Force guy, and it all came down to maybe using too much other modeling clay. But this is the dark face, and you can tell it kind of pulled up a little bit, so the tone is kind of there, and it didn't really reach all the spots. But again, that could be the clay. I'll just have to clean it up a little bit more. But the darker skin face didn't work out too well, and unfortunately, the paint for the balaclava mask around the goggles didn't really survive, so I had to touch those up. But the paint itself, the dyeing really looks good on the head. I just got to clean up the mask, and yeah, my gloves get kind of tore through, so I have some dye on my fingers. The most successful of the three, minus some cleanup, is the light-skinned head. That protected the face really well. Some minor touch-ups here needed, but overall, a really cool figure. And again, I might need to reapply this and put a little less on to make sure that I don't have the same issues when I dye this one the chocolate brown. But yeah, overall, not too bad. The Weapons Pack Hotel, the white and the mint green, going through a second bath. Now we pretty much have a black series of weapons. Just the slightest hints of color variation where that mint green was at, and the white really took the black well. The mags look awesome, and again, no issues putting everything back in. So yeah, man, this dyeing, it does take a little bit of it's a little bit of experimentation, everything, but overall, I'm really impressed. So yeah, let's just heat these guys back up and get them back together. So that's the video, everyone. I took some time, made some new characters for myself. It was really interesting for a first time dyeing, and I think the results came out really well. I'm especially impressed with the color change on the Arctic Trooper. The black really took on well to this figure, and I like where the mint green was. Now we have a subtle gray, so it gives a little more texture to this figure, and it's different enough than the original Spec Ops release that you know, this can be the commander, or you can use the original as the commander and make these guys the troopers. Really cool things to remember that I've learned through this. Maintain a low heat. If you keep your water to a light simmer, that will allow the dye to adhere to the plastic better, and you'll get a more even distribution of the color change across your figures. So remember that. Don't forget to periodically check and move the joints on the figure. You want to make sure that you get that dye evenly across the joints, unless you're going to take every single piece apart, which you can. I mean, that's something you can do. I'm just lazy and I don't feel like doing that. But just a simple 30 seconds to pull the parts out, adjust things, make sure that there are no exposing parts of the original color, and put them right back in the dye and let them go and cook away. I'm especially impressed with how Copperhead looked. I really like him in an all black jumpsuit now. And again, the way the paint goes, unless you take acetone and totally wipe the paint away, you'll get these really interesting subtle changes. Like I said here, the python stripes on his upper body that was painted on is still there, but it's very subtle now. I really like it, and it kind of matches up here with his revolver. So really cool, and I love how the belt that was bright gold is now more muted. It has a little more depth into it because of where the dye set in. Polymer clay, as I'm finding out, you know, be cautious of the amount you put on, and make sure you really get in there and cover those pieces, and get the right tools to, when you pull it back out, you can take and scrape away the edges that might stick to it. But polymer clay does stay in the hot water. It does not fall off for the most part. Now again, I had the polymer clay come off of Vampra's swords, but I think the results are okay. Might touch them up a little bit. I enjoy doing it. I'll probably do a little bit more. I have the, like I said, the other Arctic Trooper in the chocolate brown right now, and I will probably just do pictures of that result on my YouTube channel, Facebook page, and on Instagram. So why don't you just go ahead and click the like button, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram, and you will see some close-up pictures of these figures and anything else I do. And you know, it'd be great to have you along for the ride. So with that, I will close out here, guys. And again, I want to thank you for watching, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.